Saturday morning at 8 AM and yet again I am tired. I think first off I probably should say sorry, I have not been producing many videos over the last couple of weeks. No reason other than that I have got so much work on. I kind of took on a new contract in London, and it's all very interesting, all biometrics and all sorts of stuff like that, and it's fantastic fun, but my free time has gone from, oh, I've got 3 days a week to pretty much got nothing. So there hasn't been as much time to play with new kit, but you know what, it pays the bills, and sometimes we do have to do these things to get money in. Well, what I have had a chance to do, and this was kind of a bit of an experiment really, I kind of, well, in fact, let me pick it up and show you. Jumper T16. Now, the reality, this radio caused quite a storm a couple of months ago, and for good reasons, because essentially, to all intents, it comes across as a complete clone of the X10, which I can understand why everyone got the knickers in a twist and were unhappy about it. But, maybe if I get a little bit of background to this, and you might begin to understand where I'm coming from, because I'm wondering if I gave the right advice and suggestions a year or so back. Now, from my side, for those of you who don't know, a number of years ago I was relatively involved in the OpenTX project. I still have reasonably regular contact with the guys like Bertrand and God, I wish I could remember everyone's name, Kilra and all these guys, so there's relatively good dialogue with them, but not on a day-to-day basis. In the background I also do things like the openrcforums.com is all hosted by myself. It was kind of all done, this is back in the budding days when we were all using ER9X, and the guys in RC groups wanted a forum, and I got involved and we did it, and it's been great. It's still going, fantastic. I love open source. But the long and short is I have a degree of an involvement within the project whilst not actually really doing anything on the project, if that makes any sense. But yeah, a year or so back I had an email from Bertrand, and he was like, we got a bit of a situation, because effectively this old radio had suddenly surfaced, and the level of code change required to make it run truly indicated that this was not a new radio. This was a radio that basically, with 2 lines of code change from the X10 firmware, and magically it was there, which then says, well, how is it that these guys from Jumper have built a brand new Horus-based radio and it's all the same? Basically, the only option is they've gone to the X10 and pretty much cloned all the inputs and outputs. And that created a predicament for the guys on the dev team, because on one hand, they don't really condone manufacturers cloning each other's hardware, and we get that, Chinese companies are so rife with cloning everyone's kit that it just doesn't really work. If the open source is great, you can run it, but actually, should we support that hardware and those features when they are deliberately cloning? And in reality, had Jumper turned around and basically just changed half a dozen eye-opens and things like that, well, you could have argued that it was significantly different enough. They were aiming it to run the same firmware, so they went for the same CPUs, etc., but they did their own stuff. I just can't see how they did their own stuff completely when all the inputs and outputs were identical. Yeah, it is what it is. But who are we to know? Because the truth is, you could equally easily look at the source code, see what all the inputs and outputs are, and then build a new radio based on that. So, I'm not enough of an electronics expert or a coder to truly turn around and tell you what did or didn't happen. But that's how it played out. And my suggestion at the time, because Bertrand contacted me saying, Rob, you've always been quite pragmatic and, given good advice on this, which thanks for that compliment. I don't know if I truly am. But what I suggested at the time is, well, look, this is potentially a clone. We don't condone clones. It's quite simple. The guys can just fork the firmware if they want anyway. Which is kind of where Jumper TX came off the back of that, because the OpenTX guys were saying, well, you've cloned this. And the logical answer is they, you know, let's distance ourselves a little bit from it. They can make Jumper TX. And the rest is history. You know, I've actually installed OpenTX on this one, and it works absolutely fine. Bar one feature, which I'll get to. But yeah, so that's how it happened. And recently, I decided, you know what, I'm going to give this radio a try. It's such a cheap radio with so much power compared to, you know, over here I've got the X10. You know, I've got all the radio I possibly need. And I've also got that now, so I've got more radio than I need. Yeah, the long and short of this is that I thought I'm going to try this thing out, and I kind of am blown away at how good this feels in the hands. Everything on it just works, and rightly it should as OpenTX. The build quality inside, I cannot fault. There's a couple of niggles, which I'll explain in a second, but yeah, it's good, and I'm very torn at the moment because I picked this radio up and it feels so nice in my hands that I might just start using it. It's about half the weight of, by my dead reckoning, and you're half the weight of my X10, and at a price point that, you know what, if I were to drop it, does it matter? Not really. I literally, to get this thing running, I've reflashed the firmware, copied my SD card across, and whoop, it's going. It was basically just across. So it's nice, I like it, and I think I could get very used to flying with this radio. And then you're sitting saying, oh, I've got a 400 quid radio, I've got a 100 odd quid radio. Which one's better? Well, not much in it. But yeah, a couple of niggles. I think, yeah, if there's one thing I don't like on this radio, the blasted speaker. You know, I don't know if you guys can hear this. I'm going to power this up, and we'll see if we can actually get this so you can hear it. Ooh. Okay, so I'll do a trim center type scenario.
Trim center. Trim center.
You know, now that's a little bit tinny. It just sounds cheap. On the other hand, if I get my X10 up, let me get this one here. Let's see, powering the whole thing up quickly.
Switch warning. Trim center.
And you can hear it.
Trim center.
The speaker's just better. You know, I think it wouldn't have taken a lot of effort to make the speaker on this better. And, you know, I popped it open to see what I could do, and at the moment I just kind of gave up because the speaker's so buried down under the boards, and I was like, I just couldn't be bothered to pull the whole board apart and see if I can change the speaker. But to me, that's just, it's a little thing, and it could have been better. Maybe they'll do that in a new release, because just put something better on and it sounds better. You know, I like the changes. I like the fact that the trainer port and everything's at the top, because that's just the ideal position. You know, when you're wearing a head tracker or even buddy boxing, get it there, not at the back here, when every time I put the radio down, the cable gets caught up. You know, so these are just some basic ergonomics that I like. Slightly annoying. You know, internally, for example, these switches are all actually on one board. There's kind of like a PCB with these micro ribbon leads going between everything, which is great because what it means is everything's very neat. It actually feels more akin to a jetty internally than it does to something like the FreeSky stuff. But I tend to like taking this switch, and my personal preference is I get rid of that switch and I put a 2 position and a 2 position. And I'm still going to do that. But the thing is, it's sitting on a PCB board, which means in order to change the switch, I now have to desolder it from the PC board, and it becomes a bit more of a pig to do. You know, I run a far higher risk of getting something badly cocked up if I wanted to change a switch, but it is what it is. You know, maybe again, if the guys from Jumper listen, they'll actually sell some optional switches. You can do that. It's kind of, they could literally just sell baseboards which had the switches pre-soldered, so you can pop them off, pop a different type on, be a little bit more modular. Great. But yeah, that would kind of be where I'm saying they minor niggles. the radio itself is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. I really like this radio, and I can kind of just sit down and fly with it and be happy. You know, you may notice I changed my sticks, but that's because I like those sort of thicker ones for my pseudo grip that I have. But yeah, it's good. But that brings me the whole way around, is that currently I fly 99.9% crossfire. I've got a couple of quads up here which are on FreeSky, and the truth is I haven't actually flown them in over a year, and I'll probably put a crossfire receiver into them if I choose to fly them again. So no biggie, I've got a crossfire in the back. I can get on and do what I want to do. But internally, there's actually a board and a whole location designed to take a multi-protocol module. Now this really starts getting interesting, because if you were to put a multi-protocol module inside this radio would support pretty much anything you wanted to throw at it. And then you could still put your crossfire on the back. And that would be pretty cool. But there's a caveat to this. In order to do that, I need to run Jumper TX, because when Jumper TX released, their couple of lines of code essentially enable a feature which says you can run multi-protocol modules on the internal module bay. But if you put OpenTX onto it, you don't get that feature. Now, this just makes me wonder, and maybe it's a selfish thing because now I've got one of these, and before I had one I couldn't make that choice up. But now that I've got a T16, I really want that feature. And I really wanted an OpenTX. So I'm kind of curious what everyone else thinks about this, because as much as I'm anti-cloning, it's kind of such a nice radio, and open source is open source and shouldn't be affiliated to any particular brand. The cloning happens whether we like it or not, and it will continue to happen. And I dare say FreeSky, as much as they may feel they haven't, they certainly have done similar things themselves. It's the way it goes. This is just how it works in China. And I kind of also get the feeling these days that FreeSky are trying, you know, that they've kind of reached a certain point with their kit where so many people are using it, they have market sway. And you can feel them trying very hard to close down the ranks and stop other things working. You know, they want to dominate the market. Yeah, but yeah, so I kind of wonder, maybe OpenTX don't necessarily support it, but just have a tick box or something which says enable multi-protocol on internal module bay, because you know what? You could actually equally easily hack this radio to support a multi-protocol internally. Different story, isn't it? And is that right or wrong? Because if the Horus can support an internal module with a hack, then it will just work on the T16 anyway, and that's by the by. So yeah, that's where I'm at. It's a complicated one, and I kind of think politically whether or not that will ever happen, I don't know. But by personal preference, right now, I'm actually kind of feeling I might carry this one around with me more, particularly because I'm off on holiday soon, and something smaller and lighter will just be easier. You know, maybe after I use it for a few months, I'm going to go, hate it, don't like it, go back to that. I don't know, I'm fickle. We'll find out. But yeah, anyway guys, that's my thoughts on a little bit of background, and what do you guys think? Because I don't know, I just don't know which right or wrong is on this. It's and I guess that I probably only regret my initial advice because I now have one. Yeah, we live and learn, don't we? Anyway, cheers guys, enjoy your weekend.